Hello. Thanks for the generous introduction. Yeah, I'm Noah. I'm a lead security auditor at Hacken, and then today I will be telling you about honeypots, hacker traps on the blockchain, a very esoteric, very obscure exploit that you will probably not encounter unless you are a hacker. Let's start. For anyone in the audience not really familiar with the tech side of blockchain, I usually have an Ethereum crash course where I go over like the easy bits, like Ethereum is a blockchain a bit like Bitcoin, but it's special because it's Turing complete, meaning it can run code, and the general blockchain definition of decentralized value transfer network without a trusted entity. I will usually introduce you to the structure of accounts in Ethereum because it's sort of important to understand that everything happens through transactions. And there's end user accounts, which are defined by a private public key pair, which have an address defined from that's derived from the public key and a balance, as well as smart contracts, which have deterministically found addresses, a balance, but also code, usually bytecode or specifically runtime bytecode, and storage. And end user accounts can interact with smart contracts through transactions, and smart contracts can interact with other contracts or accounts through transactions which contain value and data. And of course, if you want to code on Ethereum, you have to pick a language. There are several options. The most common one, most popular one would be Solidity, which looks a bit like this. And you put that Solidity through a compiler. You get some bytecode, and using a transaction, once again, you put it up on the blockchain. Once it is on there, it runs on the EVM, which is a Turing-complete registerless 256-bit virtual machine with a gazillion opcodes, which has, of course, gas costs. You're all familiar with that for spam protection, and computations in blocks are bounded by the gas limit. Also, some important stuff is that the deployed code is immutable, though non-native proxy patterns like the OpenZeppelin one exist, and state is mutable over multiple transactions. And of course, wherever there is code, there are also exploits in that code. So since the beginning of this presentation, time averaged, of course, about $400,000 have been stolen by hackers. And yeah, I would really like some of that, honestly. But you probably also want some of this, and you want to get a hack going. And you're like, OK, yeah, I can be a hacker. So you learn all the hacking stuff, right? And you scan all the contracts, and you find a target. And you're like, look, that's a target. I could hack these guys. I can even craft a perfect transaction that's going to yield me all the many millions. And you're like, OK, yeah, I must send this transaction. And you just open your MetaMask wallet because you're a newbie hacker. And you're like, yeah, send. And then you're like, oh, no. Because front-running bots exist, because you as a hacker just got, because there's something called a front-running bot, which pretty much scans this thing called a mempool, which is where all your transactions will sit for a while, pretty much open to the public, until some validator or whoever takes them and actually executes them. And if somebody is watching the mempool and puts more gas than you did, they can get their transaction to execute before yours. So that is one way you as a hacker may lose out. Another way is if what you thought was a vulnerable target was not a vulnerable target at all. If instead it was a honeypot, a fake exploitable contract, the Hide the Pain Herald here. And that is the topic of today's presentation. Let's get into honeypots. What are they? How do they work? So honeypots, compared to the general hacker traps in traditional security, in blockchain they tend to be a bit more elegant in ways because they tend to be pure code, and I like the way security exploits look. in blockchain. They're usually more elegant. And the way they work is they make you, the hacker, believe that you can gain some funds by sending funds. Like there's usually as a hacker, you're gonna need to invest a little bit of money. Like you're gonna need a flash loan to actually manipulate like a DEX or something, or you're gonna need to put some money to become a member of something to get into a state where you can actually execute a fraudulent transaction. So like it's common, but in reality, it was specifically designed to look like it's vulnerable, and really only the owner can retrieve some funds here. So yeah, that's the big idea, right? So here's an example. Here's like the most basic school level example of a honeypot. A multiplicate function like this. So it's like just this. It's a multiplicate function on a contract. It's payable, which means it can receive funds. It's external, which means it's callable by pretty much anyone. And it has just 2 lines. If message.value, so however much you sent, is more than equals this.balance, so however much is on this contract, address message sender, you.transfer, will receive this.balance plus message.value. However much was on the contract plus however much you sent. Do you guys see any problem? I mean, the PDF format sort of gives me away here, because I cannot have the nice animations. But this.balance actually already includes message.value. So say there was 100 whatevers on the contract, and you're like, oh, I want to exploit this. Let's send 101 and fulfill this condition and get all the monies. Well, you send 101, and this.balance is already going to include the message.value. So this.balance is now going to be 201. And this condition is just not going to get executed. Depending on the optimizer, it may even be optimized out. So this could be 2 lines of code that you just put in the code anywhere, and they will just disappear when compiled. So it's a pretty cool thing. And this is just like a little semantics issue that many people may miss out on, and it's one of the first ideas for a honeypot. An impossible conditional branch that is just going to get compiled out. There's a lot more of this sort of compiled out case, though. The next one is a bit more complex. Don't get scared, though. We have 2 contracts with inheritance. On the left, we have the standard ownable. You are probably familiar with vaguely how it works. And on the right, we have a throne. And let's take a short look at the withdrawal function right here. So the withdrawal function, it's external only owner, and it does the address message sender transfer thing. So it gives you all the monies, right? And it has this only owner thing. That's a modifier, and you can see defined on the left here. It pretty much requires you to be the owner, right? And how can you become the owner? Well, let's look at the stake function here. It's payable external, so you give some monies, right? And it has 3 lines. Message value, so you sent more than largest stake. OK, seems simple enough. And then you become the owner. Oh, that's pretty nice. And the largest stake will then become your message value. OK. OK, let's send them some money, and you send some money, and then you try to do the withdraw thing, and nothing happens. The transaction fails. Why? Well, you may have noticed there's 2 owner variables here. There's the owner variable on the left in the ownable, and there's another owner variable in the throne. And the one on the left is the one used in the modifier. That's the only owner here. And it is set here in the constructor, and only then. So this one is set only once right now in the constructor. And it cannot be changed. Well, this other owner that's being used actively here, it is set here in the stake function, but it is used in nothing. So you're fooled by reading this code quickly to believe that you can become the owner this way, but really nothing is going to happen because of variable shadowing. So the owner variable is shadowed between the 2 contracts due to inheritance. And actually, newer research, there's another really nice example of something similar with role encoding. using the access control Open Zeppelin library, and that's a really devious one. So oh yeah, and the example, you may think, okay, this is sort of silly, who would fall for this? But this is about 1 Ethereum and progressively higher losses by fools. And you can see eventually somebody took all the winnings from this honeypot, right? And the user that actually deployed a ton of these honeypots, I think they earned like probably 30, 40K from just deploying this like same honeypot and catching newer generations of hackers, I guess. So it's a pretty nice one. And right now they have like 6K on their account. So they're doing well. They're doing well in life. Next one. This one is sort of the most successful in my opinion. And it's also the one that really frustrates me, that can make me feel a bit sad for the UX of crypto, because this one relies on our trust in tools, in Etherscan, and in the fact that it will provide us accurate information about what's going on the blockchain, and that it is going to provide that information in a clear and readable way, which it does not. So let's look through this one quickly. We have 2 key functions. Let's look at getGift. So this is a good way to set a password, by the way. You don't want to set the password in the contract because all variables, all data in the contract is really public. You want to get the hash of the password. So we have getGift, which takes a hash of the password as input and checks if that hash, which takes a password as the input and checks if that password unhashed matches the hash that has been set, and then it gives you all the monies. And we have the setPass function above, which takes the hash, and if the password has not been set, and if you send some monies, it is gonna allow you to set the password hash. And you're reading this, and at the beginning, pass has been set as false, and you're looking at this, and it seems the deployer, the graceful god who deployed this contract just to give you some monies, accidentally already put the monies in, 10 Ethereum or something, before setting the password. They must have been silly or made a mistake. And you're like, okay, this looks nice. I could just set the password myself and get this money. But that's not really how it goes. And that's due to this setHidden function I just left here as a placeholder. And in short, Etherscan is not very good at displaying all transactions and what they actually did. So we go to Etherscan, right? And we're looking at all these transactions. And we see a deployment here. And then we see some attempts at setting the password. And at this point, during the deployment, there's already some funds in there. And these guys that tried to set the password did so because they thought, okay, the password was not set. They couldn't see a transaction setting the password. But if you go to internal transactions and then enable advanced mode and then scroll down a bit, you can see some internal transactions with very, very unclear signatures, right? That actually did the magic of setting the password by literally just having a contract call this contract. That's it. There was just a simple routed call. And that was all that was needed to hide this from Etherscan in a very effective way for 99% of the users. So this is sort of frustrating with the UX, because I'm sure Etherscan could display contract calls or multi-sig calls to these things just as easily as they can end-user calls. And it's really silly that A, this is still an issue, and B, this is an issue at all. And I hope other transaction viewers are taking a lesson from this and improving their ability to actually see what's going on the contract, because this is a big gap. And yeah, this is one that really frustrates me. So you can see transaction viewer error, UX really. So why do these things work? Why do these things work? Why do honeypots work? Because you probably haven't heard of them because they don't target you, the users, and they do not really target projects. They target hackers. They target people eager to make some illegal bugs. And the reason they work is because hacking is a very, very crowded arena. Hackers are always actively scanning every new contract to find some exploit that they could abuse or researchers to research, right? And many of them are running tools. Many of them are running the same tools and just racing for gas. They don't really have a lot of time to think, to analyze the code, because if they take an extra 3 minutes, somebody else could claim the reward. So some of this is going to be an abuse of a tool, right? Like there may be a bug in a popular hacking automation tool like TO, and yeah, you just exploit that bug and deploy a gazillion honeypots, catching all the hackers off their balance. And the other reason is for like the more analog hackers, the complexity of the Ethereum system. You gotta look through the code, you gotta see if something's exploitable here, you don't really have a lot of time, and you get stuck on the UX. So yeah, that's why they work. And how can we detect them? What can we learn from them, really? And this is like the interesting part, because it's a bit of a summary of the learnings about honeypots and the future of honeypots. So there's two main approaches being used: symbolic solving, which is the Mithril approach, the honey badger approach in terms of tools, where you're just trying to execute the code and find if it resolves to a certain usage pattern within it. But this requires an expert, and there's like a total of 3 in the world. And the other one is ML classification, which requires a lot of data and processing power, and which is based on transaction data. And this one can find sort of novel honeypots, so it's pretty nice because of that. And it can maybe even find some stuff through general patterns. And like the general detection process for this would be, you get all the valid smart contracts, you get all their data additionally. Now it's even easier with like Google Cloud providing literally a very easily queryable database of all the smart contract bytecode, because you can just, SQL select unique, and you have all the unique bytecode before you needed to write your own indexer or something. And then you symbolically analyze it, and then you classify it using ML algorithms however you want, and just play around with that optimization. And what we can find out from that is, first, a ton of smart contracts are duplicates. 2 million deployed smart contracts, 150,000 unique bytecodes right now on Ethereum, 600,000 unique bytecodes. No more than that, like literally last week. And of that, only 50,000 are cash flow contracts. And of that, and this is why they're obscure, like 300 honeypots, right? And that, that's a lot more deployed honeypots, because if one works, you're going to deploy it a gazillion times. But it's not that many. Today, there may be like a couple hundred more. And the honeypots, they vary in terms of type. There's a balance disorder thing I mentioned as an example. There's actually a few of them in the wild that have been successful. There's the Solidity compiler-based one, so inheritance shadowing, empty string literal skipping, which is like a fun trick. Type deduction, which is, by the way, did you know Solidity has a var keyword that's just do whatever you want with these types? Yeah, there's a reason nobody uses it. And uninitialized struct, which can catch people offhand, even in proper projects, actually, these days. Because uninitialized structs tend to, they go to the first storage slot, which means they can mess with your memory. And then there's the UX stuff, so hidden state updates, hidden transfers, and like strawman contracts where you may change where a certain library or precompile points to, which can sort of mess with how easy it is to figure out what's actually going on in this code. So these types exist. Also, there are some newer ones. There's a role encoding trick, which is, hey, you know that joke about going through like someone's code base and just replacing all the semicolons with Greek question marks, and they look the same because, like, visually, but they're different Unicode characters. Yeah, imagine if we could make an exploit based on that, and that's pretty much it, with Open Zeppelin access control and some similar-looking characters. And then there's an unexecuted call, which was like, imagine if you didn't put parentheses at the end of a function, and it was just reference, and the compiler removes it anyway. Yeah, imagine if that was an exploit. Like, I mean, these are sort of esoteric and creative, not really effective. But they work. And from these exploits, what we learned was, okay, they're actually fairly successful, like 30% success rate, but they will only trap a single victim, because eventually you can see that people got messed with on Etherscan, and we have confirmed the hypothesis about tool usage, and we have confirmed how tight the space is, how crowded the room is in terms of hacking, because they're all exploited extremely quickly. A lot of newbie hackers trying to, make some way. And the hidden state update, the UX problem, is in the lead, unfortunately. They tend to be more popular as price peaks come around, so bull market, a lot more of a rush to do everything, including to hack people and to get hacked, I guess. So it's pretty interesting seasonality. They're not very profitable in terms of like big exploits, but you can make a living, like a modest living, of honeypots. It's not legal though. Thanks to Vlaho Hrdalo, who's speaking here, actually, for confirming that this would be illegal to do, even though I'm targeting hackers. So I cannot do this, sorry. But it would be a modest living. Yeah, like a gift box, the one I mentioned, it actually managed to get 12 Ethereum. And in general, you will be earning like 1.7 Ethereum per honeypot. Maybe a bit less now that they're more popular, but it's a living. And yeah, still, UX issues are the biggest gainers if you want to develop your own. And they're fairly identifiable right now, thanks to Honeybadger project and other ones. So you can actually do these analyses yourself. And recently, in like the past 2 months, there has been a lot of headway in terms of honeypots research. And you can actually now join in. There's an open source project called SmartBugs, and it compiles several different tools for analysis, including Honeybadger, and it allows you to just, analyze honeypots all you want, all day long. It's fairly efficient, multi-threaded, so you can actually run through the entire Ethereum fond of smart contracts in search of honeypots, and I would wager about 2 weeks on my laptop, which is a lot better than it was like 6 months ago when I just started messing with these things. So it's advanced a lot. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you really want to find out more, there's a Linktree link that has popped up several times. And there's the SmartBugs project, which is really the center of honeypots research right now, where it's a sub-part of that. That would be it from me, and I'm open to questions.
Is there any way that honeypots can be fully avoided?
Actually, yes. So I mentioned Theo earlier, an automated hacking tool. And more modern hacking tools, they tend to fully fork the blockchain and simulate any transactions you're going to make. And that is pretty much the most foolproof way to run these hacks. But once again, this can be time intense, which when you're in a rush can mean the difference between win and a loss.
Hi, you mentioned a devious role encoding trick. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so in short, you're all familiar with OpenZeppelin access control probably, which is like the basic access control library. And it takes roles as strings. And what these guys did, they were from Brazil, I think. They had like 2 characters with some umlauts or something, I don't know, weird characters. And they just had two different roles that looked the same in terms of visually, but were different Unicode, and they were mixing them in, like in the access control a lot to make it really confusing to actually find out what was going on and who could control what. And some hacker got stuck in that. And it's a really nice example. I don't know. I find it comical. Like, I can feel the frustration of the hacker figuring out the transaction failed, and then looking at what was actually going on and realizing he got tricked by the, Greek semicolon equivalent. Like, I would probably kick a table at that point. Any other questions?
Okay, so let's say that you find an opportunity for an exploit and it's not a honeypot. You mentioned that MEV, or you can get front run, right? If it's a publicly executable, profitable transaction, why not just use something like Flashbots Protect? Yeah, that is an option. Flashbots Protect is what we would recommend for any hackers trying to avoid being front run while doing their business. Anyone else? Yes?
So given that we have this hype about automatization, do you see like any new projects, coming up on the stage that can help automatically prevent you from like deploying a hackable contract as a junior Solidity developer?
Well, I mean, what we within Hacken recommend and what our methodology has mutated towards, and I believe we are the only ones doing this right now, is like a very, very strong reliance on testing. And I'm thinking like not just, have a few tests, happy path testing, whatever. I'm talking 100% test coverage and mutation testing to make sure you have covered all the test cases. And this is what I would plug into any CI/CD system for smart contracts. And I think that gives you a very, very good guarantee that if you did something wrong, it was because your general idea of what you want to do was wrong, like your high-level idea. And your implementation is going to be fairly good. And then for other stuff, I mean, there's Slitter, there's Mitral, there's all the fuzzing tools that you can use, but you sort of cannot be a junior when you're using those. Like, fuzzing tools are not a thing you just go into and are like, yeah, I can totally use this. They're like a thing you get into when you really want to secure a project, and you're frustrated at how hard it is to find any other exploits, and you're like at bug bounty level, not at like pre-audit level.
Yeah, I was thinking specifically, of course, about ChatGPT, because what I did, I took a screenshot of code that you showed, and I imported that into ChatGPT, and he was kind of capable of explaining me what the issue is and how I can prevent it.
Yeah, of course. That's for a very, very popular, very cool example issue. But recently, for example, there have been a few hacks due to reentrancy. Wait, reentrancy? But reentrancy is popular. We've known about it for like 5 years. How? Because everybody's aware of like maybe basic single contract, like single function reentrancy, but you need to keep in mind that you can have reentrancy between multiple functions, which is harder to find and analyze, and more advanced with like several hacks, I think like over 100 million now, global reentrancy, where you have a complex contract system, where you have reentrancy between the contract state updates, where everything is a trusted system, but you forgot to account for all the external calls to contracts within your system, and you don't have a mutex within those. So like, there's always a new exploit. It's a constantly moving area. And this is like, this year, there's no good libraries. 2 months ago, I'm literally considering joining the hackathon right now and trying to write a library. Like, there's always a new exploit, there's always something on the edge. Nothing is absolute. Anything else? Yeah? No? Okay. In that case, that would be it from me. It has been a pleasure talking to you guys about honeypots. And yeah. See you tomorrow at the Eat Belgrade panel and probably the DSci panel as well. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.